You've just joined us. You're watching Newslink on DSTV channel 403. So Gwede Mantashe has dismissed Chief Justice Raymond Zondo's findings that the ANC's cadre deployment policy is unlawful and unconstitutional. The ANC chairperson says without that policy, apartheid officials would still be in power. Now let's get reaction from political analyst Dr. Lebogang Legode. Doctor, good morning and thank you very much for your time. You know, I must say Mr. Mantashe has been consistent in his position on cadre deployment. I even remember during his testimony at the State Capture Commission, he comfortably contradicted his president. And when we say his president, this is the man at whose behest he serves in the cabinet. So clearly he feels strongly about this. And perhaps it warrants interrogation, that perhaps we need to look at his argument here and get your perspective. He believes that cadre deployment has ensured transformation in the public service. What is your take?
Good morning, Fundo, and your viewers. Look, I think Gwede Mantashe here to say that, you know, if had it not been for cadre deployment, there was going to be, you know, no transformation in public service. It's quite myopic of him. And I'm saying this because, yes, in 1994, cadre deployment was necessary, right? Given that, you know, there were quite a number of political and economic changes in the country. Not only that, I think, you know, the term transformation itself, you know, from your 2000 became much of a buzzword where, you know, various politicians and government officials, right, could not, you know, respond to this, you know, contradictions of South Africa's colonial as well as apartheid history. So for Mantashe really to say that, you know, had it not been for cadre deployment in South Africa, you know, the apartheid official would still be in charge. It's quite myopic of him.
So what of those that say, just like you say, that it perhaps just after 1994 it was necessary? What of those who say to this day it's not particularly transformed, or the intention was valid in that it sought to expose black professionals to some and allow them to get the necessary exposure in various administrative functions, that if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have happened? So what do you make of those that share his sentiments?
Look, yes, to some extent, you need to remember to say that, you know, cadre deployment is not a legislative policy of government, but that of the ANC. And yes, at that time, as I did mention, because of the political and economic changes, it had to be the case. But now that we are almost 3 decades into the new South Africa, I don't think we still have to talk of, you know, the need to go on with cadre deployment. I'm saying this also looking at the fact that, you know, there's, you know, a deteriorating service delivery in South Africa. We're seeing a number of, you know, municipalities being under administration, as well as, you know, a lot of financial mismanagement, as well as functionalism in the country. And because of those things, really, I don't think that, you know, even those who are pro cadre deployment should still, you know, talk about it even today. I think, you know, the reason why, you know, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo really deliberated on the fact that, you know, cadre deployment is unlawful and unconstitutional is because of, you know, how there's been, you know, non-compliance by HR in terms of appointing, you know, various individuals in some of the senior positions in the country. So because of that, really, I think that we need to the ANC has to go back to the drawing board as to, you know, how they could deal with this cadre deployment. I'm saying this also being aware that, you know, there is a framework of, you know, trying to professionalize public service in South Africa. But even with that, we need to also, it has to go back to the party's cadre deployment policy committee and see how, you know, they could really deal with it at that stage, and then, you know, moving on to the conferences as well as elections, specifically the 2024 elections.
So how concerning, though, is it that this statement of view comes from a very senior member of the African National Congress? Does it perhaps give South Africans hope that there will be changes insofar as that policy is concerned within the African National Congress?
I think Gwede really has been consistent with the fact that, you know, yes, there could be as many criticism on cadre deployment policy, but I don't think the party is really doing much, or the party is is tending to talk about, ANC or the end of cadre deployment in the ANC. But I think with the framework, as I've mentioned, perhaps we'll see, the party trying to be more rigorous and being more deliberate on how they're going to address this issue of cadre deployment. You need to remember, Mvundo, that really it's not really a South African phenomenon. There are quite a number of countries that do implement this cadre deployment policy, but in developed countries they don't really experience some of the protest, the service delivery protests that we are seeing in South Africa, as well as some of the municipalities being under administration. So I think the ANC, even if they still want to continue with the cadre deployment policy, they need to also be deliberate on it and see how is it that they can review and make sure that the people that they deploy in various positions in the country are those who are eligible, those who are qualified, and or those who have the experience to be in those positions.
But broadly speaking, if we had to remove ourselves from the African National Congress now and look at some of these transformation policies, be it BEE or affirmative action, what is your honest take? Because clearly they were well-meaning, but many, even the likes of the Democratic Alliance, have raised concern that if anything, they've been left or open to abuse. If it's affirmative action or the BEE, you're finding a lot of companies that end up fronting anyway. Do perhaps South Africans need to relook some of these transformation policies?
Oh yes, I think we have to really look into them. I don't think, in as much as your BEEs and your affirmative actions, in as much as they were meant to be corrective in bringing in Black people to the forefront, that has not been the case. So I think even with that, we still have to look into it and see how we could address some of these challenges that we're still facing even in post-apartheid South Africa.
All right. Dr. Lebogang, thank you very much for your time.